This is Maryville, Tennessee. To my left is Smith & Wesson's corporate headquarters and a big manufacturing plant. What's behind me is new, opened in 2025. This is the Smith & Wesson Academy. Now there are 3 ranges here, one for pistols and carbines, and then a flex range, and then a 300-yard rifle range. But what this has is one of the top trainers in the country. How good? You could probably ask about 4,000 Navy SEALs.
The Smith & Wesson Academy has just been a staple, for decades, in Springfield, Massachusetts, back in the days when, 80, 85, 90% of law enforcement officers carried the Model 10. It was kind of a rite of passage for, law enforcement officers to come to the, to the Mecca, to Smith & Wesson, to, learn from, the factory experts about, everything about that firearm, how to shoot, how to care for the gun, and it just, and when we shut that down back in the early 2000s, I was here and, kind of a little bit sad, it was a kind of an end of an era. It was probably the right decision at the time, but, now with this, with our new facility here in Tennessee and the opportunity to bring a guy like Mark Cocciolo in, when that opportunity presented itself, it was just kind of a no-brainer. Like, let's get back, that iconic, aspect of the Smith & Wesson brand experiences.
But more importantly is you got to have the right person for it, right? You got to have the person that's passionate about teaching people, that can bridge the gap between the military side and the civilian side, right? Like if I want my wife to come take a class, she's not going to be dropping and doing PT when she misses the target. That's not what we're trying to do here. And I'd met Mark Cocciolo through a friend and spent an hour with him at the range, and his passion for training, his
finger goes on the trigger,
ability to even help someone like me with carbine and acquiring, finessing my skills was amazing. I'd never met someone who could train the way he did.
The way I ended up as the director of the Smith & Wesson Academy, I was a SEAL for 25 years. I spent 8 years on Tier 1 unit. And when my last 3 years of active duty, I was the 3rd phase training officer at Basic Underwater Demolition SEAL Training, BUDS. I spent the next 13 years as a contract BUDS instructor. So still going out to San Clemente Island, teaching guys, and, between 2008 and 2023, I put about 4,000 guys through training, right? So I learned how to teach people how to shoot.
It's easy to keep the campus mentality, right? So when we looked at other places that we could potentially build it in the area, it just didn't feel like home, right? So when we think of Smith & Wesson being the oldest American gun manufacturer in history, we thought we're bringing our headquarters here, and it just makes it easier for us to build something right here for us, right? We don't have to be spread out all over the map. Right now we're located in 3 different states, and we like to keep it that way. So it just felt more like home here. Tennessee's been great to us so far, and so we've been able to kind of foster relationships within the community here, and we thought this was a no-brainer to just put the X down here for us.
We have a 300-yard range, which is great for zeroing our hunting rifles or learning long-range shooting. We've got the flex range where you can do 180-degree engagements. We've got the pistol carbine range. It's a fantastic. We have a shoot house, which is great for the LE side or military side with simunitions. It's a fantastic state-of-the-art facility, and it's in our backyard, which is fantastic.
My thing, though, is my whole idea was making SEALs as good as shots as they could be, right? So I co-wrote all the curriculum that we used out there, and they're still using most of it now. This has given me the opportunity to make everybody better. I teach defensive use of firearms because that's that's my background. You want to go hunting? Great, I can teach you the fundamentals on how to get your natural point of aim and take long shots. But for the most part, defensive pistol and defensive carbine. So if you've never touched a gun before, you've been off a gun for a long time, and you just want to learn the right way from the bottom up, then take an intro and then start with pistol 1, pistol 2, pistol 3. What I did is basically I took the BUDS curriculum, and we've got those guys out there for 2 weeks, and we can for 24/7 for 2 weeks, so you can really drill down on those guys. But with civilians, there's only so much you can learn in a day. And so we kind of rewrote everything and did some test classes and figured out about where we're at, so I can get you from not knowing anything to being proficient. Of course, you're going to have to do the work to make it automatic. I guess the biggest thing was just the focus, the decision that, okay, it's going to be a defensive shooting academy. I think that's the most important. And then concentrating on the fundamentals.
This facility behind me was built in literally under 90 days. It took the vision of Coach, but also the vision of CEO Mark Smith.
For our law enforcement officers and military and federal agency officers, of course, but also for the consumers. We have kind of a core value here of responsible firearms ownership, and as you know, and everybody knows, a big part of that is firearms proficiency. Knowing how to use your firearm, being comfortable with it, being proficient with with shooting a firearm, and what better place, what better company, what better individual in Mark to be able to teach people how to do that. And give them that confidence. We have a kind of our motto is empowering Americans, and it's nothing more empowering than being comfortable and being proficient with your firearm. And so for the law enforcement officers, for sure, but also for for the average consumer, whatever skill set, whether you're first time picking up a gun or you've been shooting competitions, there's always something you can learn.
But now, the reason we do this is we got side to side and front to back, okay? The stability is what we want. You see a lot of guys doing this when they're shooting, but where's my side to side stability? Any little breeze and it's gonna rock me, so you wanna stay squared up. Okay, so the easy part when you're dealing with SEALs is they all have the same gear. They got the same they better have a good attitude, right? And the same guns, all right? Well, civilians roll in, they can bring whatever gun. All right, and they have different gear. So that in itself, and then the experience level and the motivation that you come across. I tell people a lot, finger off the trigger, please. Okay, as long as they're got the muzzle down range, we're cool. But it's just a natural ergonomic thing. Your finger just falls on there. You got to train it off. All right, so there's a little more patience involved with civilians because I can't send them to get wet and sandy like I could a SEAL candidate.
Remember, you're adding pressure straight back. Keep those sights lined up, and as you add pressure, there you go. Some people say, yeah, let it surprise you. I hate surprises. Okay, so just squeeze the trigger until it goes bang. Right, and you're starting to grip more with the end of that thumb. Press here.
The Academy is not just for LE or military operators, it's for everyone. We do civilian classes there. If you're new to firearms, or me, like I've been shooting for a while, but want to increase your performance or your abilities, it's a fantastic place to learn. And Coach is an amazing instructor. Like, if he can work with me, he can work with anybody.
I try and meet them where they are and make them better, rather than just saying, hey, you should be here, but if you're not here, get there. No, I'll build you up from the ground up.
When we designed the academy, and we're not done, there's there's more design plans in the works right now. But it was really around kind of a purpose-built facility for that law enforcement officer, for that, and really that's what it's built around.
Having this tool for them to come and train while carrying Smith & Wesson firearms is great. We've got certain range days every month that folks will come out and use the facility. And honestly, any time that there's an opportunity for them to get some extra training in and we're not booked up, they come out here, and it's kind of an open door policy with our local law enforcement agencies that we'd like to see expand.
Okay, you don't want to train in a stressed out, environment. You want to, time stress, competition stress, something like that. It elevates your heart rate a little bit, and it'll show you what you don't own. All right. So in the draw, if you're doing it for time now as you draw, and if you screw something up, it's like, okay, where did you screw up? Because now you're trying to go fast. All right. I don't want you to go fast. I want you to execute your fundamentals as smoothly as possible. And the more you do that, the faster you'll go.
And that's what it was designed around, kind of the idea of, hey, you design for the top. And then, if you're a consumer and you want to come in and, obviously we're probably not going to be running consumers through a shoot house. But, it's, you know, that academy can serve any need, any skill set, you know, and that's the idea there, is to, you know, kind of be that comfort, I guess, for consumers is, hey, I'm going to go to the Smith Wesson Academy and I'm going to learn, you know, everything I would ever want to know, whether that's competitive shooting or whether that's, you know, situational or, you know, self-defense or just getting comfortable with your firearm, right? And is to be that, you know, go-to spot, that go-to resource for consumers, law enforcement agencies, military, federal agency business.
So I can grab whatever I want. I can, with my crazy ideas, if I tweak something and want to try it, I don't have to go into the factory and break into the production area and try to use their range or bother their people. I can just drive my car through the gate to the back, set up some targets, and just try out my crazy ideas.
There's nothing that beats being an assaulter on a Tier 1 counterterrorist unit, okay? You can't beat that. But you also can't do that forever. It wears you out. So that would be number one, obviously. Number two was making SEALs better, you know, because that's where I came from. I was giving back. And like I said, I trained about 4,000 of the guys that are out running around with tridents on now. When that ended, it was like, all right, what can I do next? And this opportunity, that door closed, this door opened. And so now my focus is on just bringing everybody into the fold and learning how to use and respect guns.